Many other prophets and seers have seen conflicts, wars, and catastrophes followed by a new golden age or 1,000 years of peace. It is only human wanting to reject all these destructive parts of such accounts. But current world events, trends, and developments make it necessary to not only take a closer look, but to also ask ourselves, can we change the future before it happens? Since time immemorial, humans have had the desire to look into the future. All over the world and in all cultures, you will find shamans, oracles, astrologers, psychics, remote viewers, and seers who specialize in predicting future events, whether these are significant for individuals or society at large. History, or at least what we believe to be history, tells us that kings, queens, pharaohs, and most other rulers have used the services of seers and prophets. Some are said to have not made any significant decisions without consulting their personal fortune tellers first. There is an extensive list of well-known prophets and seers throughout the world. Names that are often mentioned are Nostradamus, the Oracle at Delphi, Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, and in more modern times, people like Edgar Cayce or Jeane Dixon. Of course, there are also many prophets and prophecies among the tribal and indigenous people of all continents, including North America. While many people are deeply interested in prophecies and remote viewing, these abilities have never become a field of extensive scientific study or research, at least not officially. Unofficially, almost every government of the world had or has ongoing secret programs that examine all aspects of these phenomena, including the active training of remote viewing. One program that has become known was Project Stargate, which according to declassified documents ran from the 1970s to the 1990s and focused on remote viewing and psychic phenomena. According to these documents, they were specifically looking for military applications of these phenomena, like for example gathering information about distant or unseen targets, using extrasensory perception or ESP. Naturally, such programs also led to the discovery, invention, and use of technologies that would fulfill the same purpose, like Project Looking Glass, which we discussed extensively on this channel. Roughly 40% of all US presidents have used the services of psychics, astrologers, or remote viewers. Among them are Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, John F. Kennedy, Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump, to name only a few. Other world leaders who are either rumored or confirmed to have consulted astrologers, psychics, and seers are Turkey's President Erdogan, Russia's President Putin, Britain's former Prime Minister Tony Blair, and many more. Many business moguls and CEOs are keeping astrologers and psychics on retainer and plan their acquisitions, sales, investments, and other important decisions accordingly. One of the most prolific prophets or seers of the 20th century was a German man named Alois Irlmaier, who lived from 1894 to 1959. According to Stefan Berndt, a German prophecy researcher who created a database with more than 5,000 individual prophetic messages from European prophets and seers between the 11th and the 20th century, Alois Irlmaier was the most accurate and significant seer in the last 400 years. Stefan Berndt says that Irlmaier's prophecies are still important and valid for our present day. During the Second World War, he accurately predicted bombings of specific towns, villages, and houses and was able to warn people ahead of time and tell them where to hide to remain safe. Many people came to see him during or after the war to inquire about their husbands, sons, brothers, and fathers who fought in the war. By just looking at the picture of a soldier, Irlmaier was able to tell whether he was well, injured, or dead. His best known and to this day unfulfilled prophecy is about World War III, what precedes it, and the age thereafter. Irlmaier predicted a future conflict involving a large-scale war, with Germany at the center of the turmoil. He described the outbreak of World War III as a sudden and unexpected event that would catch people off guard. The war was envisioned to involve extensive military movements, including the use of tanks and other modern weaponry.
Everything calls peace, shalom. Then it will occur, a new Middle East war suddenly flames up, big naval forces are facing hostility in the Mediterranean, the situation is strained. But the actual firing spark is set on fire in the Balkan. I see a large one falling, a bloody dagger lies beside him, then impact is on impact.
Speaking about Germany, Irlmaier said that the year before the war will be fruitful with much fruit and grain. Apparently, a series of high-profile murders are the triggers for the war.
2 men kill a third, high-ranked. They were paid by other people. One of the murderers is a small black man, the other one is a little bit taller, with bright-colored hair. I think it will be at the Balkans, but cannot say it exactly. After the murder of the third it starts overnight. I see quite clearly 3 numbers, 2 8s and a 9. But I cannot say what it means and cannot state a time. The war begins at sunrise. It comes along rapidly.
According to Irlmaier's vision, the war will come as a complete surprise to the people and catch them off guard. Irlmaier described eerie scenes in quite great detail.
The farmers are sitting in the pub playing cards, when the foreign soldiers look through the windows and doors. A dark army comes from the east and everything occurs very rapidly. I see a 3, but I do not know if it means 3 days or 3 weeks. It comes from the Golden City. It begins at the blue water in the northwest and goes to the Swiss borders. As far as Regensburg, no more bridges crossing the Danube exist. They do not come from the south of the blue water.
What Irlmaier is talking about is a surprise Russian attack on Germany. What seemed extremely unlikely before the Ukraine war is now an openly talked about possibility in Germany and the rest of Europe. What seemed extremely unlikely before the Ukraine war is now an openly talked about possibility in Germany and the rest of Europe. What follows are a few parts of Irlmaier's description of the progression of the war and the involvement of multiple world powers.
I see 3 spearheads coming. The first spearhead comes along over the Black Forest, but then pulls up to the northwest alongside the Danube. The second spearhead goes from east to west over Saxonia, the third from northeast to southwest. The Russians do not stop anywhere, day and night they run in order to reach the Ruhr district, where the many furnaces and fireplaces are. Immediately the revenge comes from across the large water. However, the Yellow Dragon invades Alaska and Canada at the same time. But he does not come far that I see the earth like a ball before me where now the white pigeons fly, a very large number coming up from the sand. And then it rains yellow dust in a line. When the Golden City is destroyed, it begins. Like a yellow line it goes up to the city in the bay. It will be a clear night when they begin to drop it. The tanks are still driving, but those who sit in these tanks became quite black. Where it falls down, everything will be dead, no tree, no bush, no cattle, no grass. It all becomes withered and black. The houses still exist. I don't know what it is and so I cannot tell. It is a long line. Whoever goes over this line, dies. The ones who are on the one side cannot go over to the other side. Then everything at the spearheads breaks down. They all must go to the north. Whatever they carry with them, they throw away. Nobody will come back anymore.
The white pigeons coming from the sand were a mystery to many who tried to interpret Irlmaier's vision. He described it as a large swarm or squadron, and in a way that was not necessarily consistent with airplanes. It wasn't until the advent of drones that this became clearer. Apparently he saw a squadron of drones coming from the sand, perhaps an Arabic nation, flying to Europe and dropping a yellow dust or powder that kills everything it touches. This points to chemical warfare in Europe. Also, Irlmaier talks about the Yellow Dragon invading Alaska and Canada. The Yellow Dragon is clearly China. With an unprecedented number of military-aged Chinese men crossing the southern border of the United States in recent weeks and months, many are already calling this the beginning of an invasion. According to Irlmaier, it'll all unfold very fast and the attack of the Russians won't last very long.
By a natural catastrophe or something similar, the Russians suddenly evade to the north. Around Cologne the last battle has started. At the Rhine I see a half-moon, which wants to devour everything. The horns of the sickle want to close in. What this means, I do not know. Then they are flying to the north. In the center there is a mark, there lives nothing anymore, no human, no animal, no grass. They fly to the far north, where the third spearhead had come in and cut off everything. So they will all be murdered, nobody from these three armies will come back home anymore. But then a single airplane, which comes from the east, throws something into the large water. Then the water lifts itself up as high as a tower and falls down. Everything is inundated. There is an earthquake. The southern part of England slips into the water. 3 large cities will be ruined, one will be destroyed by the water, the second is located so high in the sea, that you can only see the church tower, and the third falls into it. The whole action will not last long. I see 3 lines, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, I don't know exactly, but it won't last long.
I have studied and read Irlmaier's predictions many times over the years, and there was always one that stood out to me. In this particular vision, he saw something that others before and after him had seen as well. In today's world, we might suggest that these seers and psychics are copying each other, or at least are influenced by each other. However, we have to consider that Irlmaier died in 1959, long before the internet or social media. World news traveled much slower, and the access to information was severely limited compared to today, especially in rural areas. We can assume that whatever vision Irlmaier had that resembled the visions of others before him was as authentic as the ones that are attributed to only him. The one vision that always stood out to me was about 3 days of darkness, a highly popularized prophecy that has been repeated frequently, especially in the Christian part of the world. Irlmaier saw it very clearly, and for some reason, I always believed that this was the one we should pay attention to the most. 3 days and 3 nights of complete darkness. Many people have speculated what could possibly cause such an event, and some have connected it to the cyclical reset expected to happen again in 2030, according to Jason Brashears from Archaics. Whatever the cause of it may be, Irlmaier has described it very clearly and included specific instructions.
During the war the big darkness comes, which lasts 72 hours. It will become dark one day during the war. Then a hailstorm consisting of lightning and thunder and an earthquake that shakes the earth. Please do not go out of the house at that time. The lights will not work, except for candle light, electricity stops. Whoever inhales the dust, dies. Do not open the windows, cover them completely with black paper. All open water becomes poisonous, and so does all open food, which is not stored in sealed cans. This also applies to anything in glass, because the glass would not protect the contents completely. Outside, death by dust goes around, many humans die. After 72 hours everything is over. But again, do not go out of the house, do not look out of the windows, and keep the candle light burning. And pray. Overnight more humans will die than in the 2 world wars before.
The 3 days of darkness seemed to be the turning point in the war Irlmaier saw. However, these 72 hours of complete darkness do not signify the end of the war. Irlmaier foresaw extreme upheavals and a revolution in Russia, as well as major European cities like Rome and Paris. He also described the end of the war and the time that comes thereafter.
The large city with the high iron tower is on fire. But this has been done by their own people, not by those who came from the east. And I can exactly see that the city is destroyed to the ground. And in Italy wild things are happening as well. They kill many people there and the Pope flees, but many clergymen will be killed, many churches collapse. In Russia there's a revolution and civil war. The corpses are so many that you cannot remove them from the streets any longer. The cross will be honored again. The Russian people believe in God again. The big ones among the party leaders commit suicide, and in the blood the great guilt is washed off. I see a red mass, mixed with yellow faces, it is a big riot and horrible killing. Then they sing the Easter song and burn candles in front of sacred pictures. By the prayer of Christianity the monster of hell dies, also, the young people believe again in the intercession Mother of God. After the victory, an emperor is crowned by the fleeing pope. How long all this lasts, I do not know. I see 3 nines. The third 9 brings the peace. When everything is over, a part of the inhabitants will have died, and the people are frightened of God again. The laws, which bring death to the children, become invalid after the clearing. Then there will be peace. A good time. I see 3 crowns flashing, and a gaunt old man will be our king. Also, the very old crown in the south will be honored again. When the flowers bloom on the meadows, the Pope will return and mourn for his murdered brothers. After these events, a long, lucky time comes. Those who will experience it will be very happy and can consider themselves lucky. But the people have to begin there, where their grandfathers began.
While Irlmaier's prophecy clearly shows major destruction and a great loss of human life, it does point to a very good future afterwards, a time of true peace on earth. Many other prophets and seers have seen conflicts, wars, and catastrophes followed by a new golden age or 1,000 years of peace. It is only human wanting to reject all these destructive parts of such accounts. But current world events, trends, and developments make it necessary to not only take a closer look, but to also ask ourselves, can we change the future before it happens? The answer is, yes, we can. In my understanding, prophecy and remote viewing is based on the trajectory humanity is on at the time of the prophecy. If major trends, behavioral patterns, and the level of consciousness begin to change, the future begins to change with it. And perhaps the visions received by psychics, seers, and remote viewers do not come to pass in that way. In other words, if we can change the timeline, whatever future was projected for the old timeline does not have to play out in the new one. As such, prophecies like these can positively affect many people, as the projections of a worst-case scenario can serve as a catalyst for change. Not to dismiss them or reject them, but to use them as inspiration. If we all work on becoming the best possible version of ourselves, these scenarios might not have to play out after all. As always, the most important answers lie within, as does the path to a very different future. You deserve the truth, but big tech does not want you to hear it. So we built our own Inspired platform on theinspiredchannel.com. Just click the link in the video description or the pinned comment.